I remember the morning sun spilling over the cobblestone streets of Savannah, painting everything in gold. The Spanish moss swayed lazily from the live oaks as if the trees themselves were sighing with contentment. I often walked these streets, thinking of them as my own quiet refuge, a place where every corner held a memory and every face felt familiar. My name is Emma Hartley, and though I didn't know it yet, that calm, gentle Savannah life was about to change forever. I had just turned 21, a year that felt like it should be brimming with freedom and self-discovery. But freedom can be deceptive. I lived with my mother and younger brother Eli in a modest, ivy-covered house near Forsyth Park. My father had passed when I was 16, and his absence was a weight I still carried, sometimes in silence, sometimes in a sudden, choking sorrow. I had just turned 21, a year that felt like it should be brimming with freedom and self-discovery. But freedom can be deceptive. I lived with my mother and younger brother, Eli, in a modest, ivy-covered house near Forsyth Park. My father had passed when I was 16, and his absence was a weight I still carried, sometimes in silence, sometimes in a sudden, choking sorrow. Mother tried to fill the gaps, her laughter ringing louder than usual, but grief has a way of curling around the corners of your life, subtle yet unyielding. Sophia had been my best friend since middle school, bright, stubborn, and impossibly empathetic. She had a way of making ordinary days extraordinary. That morning, she barged into my room, tossing a stack of flyers across my bed. "Emma, you have to see this," she said, her eyes sparkling like they always did when she was excited. I frowned, brushing my hair back. "See what?" "The Savannah Heritage Festival. They're looking for volunteers to help organize, and wait for it, they're letting local musicians perform. This could be huge for you." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You really think I'm ready to play in front of the whole town?" Music had always been my safe space, the one place I could speak without words. But performing publicly? That felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, hoping not to fall. "You've been practicing for years. Don't let fear decide for you," Sophia said, folding her arms with her trademark stubbornness. I sighed, thinking of Mason. He had moved back to Savannah last year after finishing college, and the town still whispered about him like he was some legend. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes that seemed to see right through you, Mason had always been both a friend and a puzzle I couldn't solve. He had a quiet intensity, the kind that made you want to prove yourself, yet also left you nervous. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face him that morning, let alone a crowd. Then there was June, my mentor at the local hospital volunteer program. Caring, patient, and impossibly organized, June had a knack for finding your strengths when you couldn't see them yourself. I admired her more than I could explain. She had survived storms of her own, literal and metaphorical, and somehow carried hope like a torch. That weekend, we gathered by the river, helping decorate for the festival and setting up tables for the craft booths. Savannah had a way of bringing people together, of making you feel like you were part of a story bigger than yourself. I watched as Sophia spoke to the festival organizers with her usual confidence, Mason quietly lifting heavy crates without complaint, and June checking in on everyone with a warm smile that reached her eyes. And me? I stood slightly apart, strumming my guitar softly, listening to the rhythm of the town, trying to calm the nervous flutter in my chest. It was during one of these afternoons, the air thick with humidity and the scent of magnolias, that the first news came. The weather report flickered on the screen in the small cafe where we'd paused for iced tea. A hurricane, a Category 4, was heading straight for Georgia's coast. The anchor's voice was steady, almost too calm. Residents are advised to prepare for significant flooding and high winds. Evacuation orders may follow. I remember the way the words sank into me, heavy and cold. I looked around at the familiar streets, the shops with painted shutters, the families laughing on the sidewalks, and I realized none of this would feel the same soon. Sophia grabbed my hand, her grip firm. "Emma, we'll get through this. We always do." I nodded, though a tight knot of fear had already taken root in my stomach. That night, lying in my room with Eli asleep across the hall, I thought of my father and the storms he had always warned us about, both the literal and the ones life throws at you when you least expect them. I didn't know then how much truth there was in his words. The next morning, the sky was an eerie shade of gray. Clouds roiling like ink spilled across the horizon. Savannah's streets seemed quieter, as though the town itself was holding its breath. The moss on the trees shivered in the wind, and even the river seemed to move with a nervous urgency. That's when I realized the real story, the one I would one day tell in this autobiography, was about more than just surviving a hurricane. It was about discovering courage I didn't know I had, about friendships that could hold even in the fiercest winds, about love and loss intertwined in ways that could break you or make you stronger. And I had no choice but to face it head on. The morning the storm arrived, Savannah was unrecognizable. The sun that had once spilled gold over the streets was swallowed by a suffocating gray. The air smelled of salt and damp earth, heavy and urgent, as if the city itself was bracing for impact. I pressed my hands against the kitchen window, watching the river swell like a living thing, its currents brashing against the banks. Mother was already busy taping windows and stacking supplies, her face a mixture of determination and quiet worry, while Eli tried to help, though his small hands barely made a dent. Sophia burst through the door, her hair damp from the mist that clung to everything. "We have to check on everyone, Emma," she said, urgency in her voice. "Neighbors, the elderly, anyone who might need help. We can't just sit here." I nodded, swallowing the lump of fear in my throat. My guitar sat by the sofa, silent for once, as if even it sensed the tension. Mason appeared in the driveway, his usual calm replaced by a focused intensity. He had already helped Mr. Franklin, our elderly neighbor, secure his windows and stock up on essentials. His eyes met mine briefly, a silent reassurance, before he moved on to the next house. By mid-afternoon, the winds began to howl. It was no longer gentle gusts, but a raw, boiling, relentless force that rattled doors and tore at the shingles. I clutched a blanket around my shoulders as we huddled in the living room, Mother reading the emergency guidelines aloud, Eli trembling next to her. The radio crackled with updates, each one more ominous than the last. Evacuation zones in effect, flooding expected. Residents are urged to seek shelter immediately. June called me on my cell, her voice calm but edged with concern. "Emma, stay with your family, but be ready to help others. Hospitals are preparing for an influx, and I might need volunteers who can stay longer." "I'm coming," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. Could I really do this? Could I face the storm, the fear, and the people who might need me most? By evening, the hurricane had arrived in full force. The sky was a tumult of black clouds and streaks of lightning. Wind lashing against every surface. I could hear the river pounding, see debris swirling in its currents like a chaotic ballet. Mason appeared at our door, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He didn't speak, just handed me an extra flashlight. And in that silence, I felt the strength of unspoken friendship, the kind forged in shared trials. The night stretched endlessly. Windows shook violently, and our house groaned under the storm's weight. Eli clutched my arm, whispering, "I'm scared, Emma." And I held him tight, my own fear pressing against my chest. Outside, I could hear shouts, neighbors calling for help, the sounds of cars being tossed by the wind, the river's angry roar. At some point, the power went out. Darkness swallowed everything, leaving only the occasional flash of lightning to illuminate the chaos. Sophia's voice rang out, commanding yet gentle. "Emma, we need to get to the community center. It's safer. Everyone's heading there." We braved the streets, rain cutting through clothes, hair plastered to faces. The river now a monstrous wall threatening to consume everything. Mason led the way, his arm steady on my shoulder when I stumbled. We helped Mrs. Franklin out of her flooded porch, then guided Mr. Ramirez, who lived alone at the end of our street, toward the community center. Drop. I could see fear etched on every face, but also determination, that strange courage people find when the world seems intent on breaking them. By the time we reached the community center, it was already crowded. Families huddled together, children clinging to parents, the elderly sitting silently, eyes wide with worry. June was there, coordinating triage for anyone injured or at risk. Her calmness was contagious, and somehow I felt myself grounding in it. Finding a strength I hadn't known I possessed. The night dragged on. Wind screamed, water seeped through corners, and the center itself shook as if it too were bracing against the hurricane's wrath. I moved from person to person, comforting children, carrying blankets, and helping Mason guide the volunteers. Sophia never left my side, and then a sudden crash jolted us. The roof support beams had weakened, water poured in, and panic surged. I grabbed Eli and Sophia's hands, Mason pulling us to safety behind a sturdier wall. The sound of splintering wood, screaming neighbors, and the river's furious roar melded into a nightmare I couldn't escape. Yet amidst the terror, I realized something. Fear alone wouldn't protect anyone. Only action, courage, and unity would. Hours felt like days. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed, or at least moved on. Savannah was unrecognizable. Streets were submerged, trees uprooted, power lines dangling dangerously. The smell of wet wood and earth permeated everything. I stood at the edge of the community center, holding Eli close, watching Mason and Sophia coordinate efforts to check on the town. The weight of exhaustion pressed down, but so did a fierce sense of responsibility. I understood then that this storm was more than wind and rain. It was a test of resilience, a mirror reflecting the fragility and strength of life. And as I looked around at the friends, neighbors, and strangers who had survived the night together, I felt a flicker of hope. Even in devastation, we were not broken. Not yet. The morning after the storm, Savannah felt like a ghost town. The streets I once knew so well were shattered, littered with debris, fallen trees, and the remnants of lives suddenly upended. The river had crested hours ago, but its mark remained. Mud street homes, soaked belongings, and a silence that felt heavier than the storm itself. I walked alongside Mason, Sophia, and June through our neighborhood, each step sinking slightly in mud and splintered wood. Mother had insisted we stay together, but even as I helped Eli navigate the mess, I felt a tug, a call to do more. The community center had become our headquarters, a hub for organizing aid, delivering food, and checking on the injured. People were arriving from all over town, some with nowhere else to go, their faces etched with exhaustion, fear, and a quiet despair. June moved among them like a lighthouse. "Emma, Can you take a team to check on the west side of the neighborhood? His hands trembled as he clutched his walking cane, and I placed my hand over his, trying to offer what comfort I could. It's all gone, he whispered, voice barely audible. It's not gone, I said, surprising myself. We're here. We'll help. You're not alone. Mason steadied him, and Sophia began clearing debris. I realized then that resilience wasn't about pretending the storm didn't hurt. It was about showing up anyway, helping others stand when they couldn't do it alone. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion gnawed at us. I was drenched, muddy, and my hands ached from lifting, pushing, and clearing. Yet every time I felt like stopping, I'd glance at Mason's steady presence, Sophia's unwavering energy, and June's quiet guidance, and I'd keep going. Later, we received word that a small clinic on the outskirts of town had been damaged, and June needed volunteers to help transport patients and supplies. Later, we received word that a small clinic on the outskirts of town had been damaged, and June needed volunteers to help transport patients and supplies. The news hit harder than I expected. Some people had been trapped, injured, or stranded by floodwaters. My stomach twisted, but there was no time to hesitate. At the makeshift hospital, June worked tirelessly, triaging patients, coordinating with paramedics, and ensuring that no one was left unattended. I helped where I could, carrying blankets, offering water, comforting children whose parents were injured. Mason stayed by my side, though I could see the strain on him too. He had been deeply affected by the storm, especially since his childhood home had suffered significant damage. The day stretched into evening. The clinic was full, the community center buzzing with volunteers, and yet, amidst the chaos, I felt something shift inside me. Then, for the first time, I wasn't just surviving alongside the storm. I was responding to it, leading in small ways, making a difference. But resilience came at a cost. That night, I sat on the steps outside the community center, hands muddy, hair plastered to my forehead, and let the tears come. Eli was asleep in a corner, exhausted but safe. Sophia dozed beside me, leaning on my shoulder. Mason stayed nearby, silent, but I felt his presence like a shield. I remembered the night of the hurricane, the fear that had clawed at me, and I understood how fragile life could be. And yet, I also realized how fiercely it could endure when people chose hope over despair. The following days were a blur of rebuilding, clearing streets, repairing homes, distributing food, and checking on neighbors. Each success, no matter how small, felt monumental. One afternoon, a group of children from the community center approached me, shy but smiling. They had collected broken branches and debris and fashioned them into a makeshift stage. "Will you play for us, Emma?" one asked. My heart swelled and I nodded. I strummed my guitar, and for a brief moment, music filled the battered streets. Laughter returned, fragile but genuine. It reminded me that even after destruction, joy could reemerge, fragile yet persistent, like the first green shoots after a storm. Through it all, Mason remained a steadfast companion. We worked together, laughed, and shared silent moments of reflection. I realized that the storm had stripped away pretenses. There was no room for superficial worries, only truth. And in that truth, our bond deepened. Sophia never left my side, her energy infectious, her optimism unwavering. Even when despair threatened to settle in, she reminded me that together we could face anything. June, ever the guiding force, observed quietly, offering advice and gentle encouragement. She taught me patience, empathy, and the importance of staying grounded even amidst chaos. By the end of the week, we had begun to see progress. Streets were clearer, some homes partially repaired, and the community center had become a symbol of hope. Savannah was battered, but it was far from broken. And through it all, I discovered a strength in myself I had never known, a resilience born not from ease, but from enduring the storm and choosing to rise afterward. That night, as I lay in my bed, listening to the gentle drip of water from a leaky roof, I thought of my father. I imagined him smiling, proud of the courage I had found. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready, not just to survive, but to embrace the life that awaited on the other side of devastation. The days that followed were a mixture of exhaustion and small victories. Savannah was bruised, yet it was awakening, breathing slowly after the storm. Streets once lined with towering oaks now bore stumps and jagged branches. Shops had been shuttered, their windows boarded, but people moved about with purpose, clearing debris, offering supplies, and helping neighbors in ways that felt almost miraculous. I had fallen into a rhythm I hadn't known I could sustain. Morning light found me at the community center, helping organize donations, distributing water and blankets, and coordinating volunteer schedules. Mason and Sophia were always at my side. Mason's calm, steady presence anchored me, and Sophia's enthusiasm infused our efforts with laughter, even when the work was grueling. June had organized a makeshift schedule for medical support, and she asked me to assist with coordination. I felt honored and nervous, but somehow capable. Walking through the crowded center, checking on injured residents, and listening to their stories, I realized the storm had revealed the heart of Savannah. Beneath the broken trees and shattered glass, the town's spirit endured, stronger than I could have imagined. One afternoon, we arrived at a particularly devastated block near the river. Homes were submerged, fences torn apart, and power lines dangled dangerously. A small crowd had gathered, trying to salvage what they could. Among them was Mrs. Delaney, an elderly woman who had lived in the same house for over 50 years. Her home had been flooded, and her beloved piano, her pride and joy, was ruined. She sat on the curb, hands folded, staring at the waterlogged ruins. "I don't know if I can fix this," she said quietly, tears streaming down her face. I knelt beside her, brushing mud from her hands. "You don't have to fix it alone," I said. "We're all here, and together, we can start again." Mason helped salvage what we could from the ruins, and Sophia organized the neighborhood kids to clear debris. Slowly, Mrs. Delaney smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen on her since the hurricane. That small moment reminded me why all this effort mattered. Not just survival, but restoration, hope, and connection. As days passed, we began to plan a community celebration, a small festival of recovery. The hurricane had taken so much, but it could not take our resilience. We would honor what had endured, and in that celebration, heal together. Preparations for the festival were a testament to human spirit. Local musicians volunteered to play, street vendors offered food, and artisans repaired crafts for sale. Sophia was in charge of decorations, turning broken pieces of wood and tattered fabric into banners that symbolized endurance. Mason helped with logistics, ensuring the setup was safe and orderly. June coordinated first aid stations and volunteer schedules, teaching me more about leadership and patience than any classroom ever could. I was asked to perform that night, and as I held my guitar, I felt a rush of anxiety. But it was different from before. This wasn't about personal fear or perfection. It was about giving the community a voice, a way to breathe, and a moment of beauty after destruction. The festival evening arrived, golden and calm, as if Savannah itself wanted to celebrate with us. Families gathered, children ran through the streets, and the smell of roasted corn and sweet pastries filled the air. Music floated over the crowd, laughter punctuating the hum of conversation. I looked at Mason, Sophia, and June, all working tirelessly, and felt a surge of gratitude. These were the people who had endured with me, who had held my hand through fear and uncertainty. When my turn came, I stepped onto the small stage, the crowd hushed in anticipation. I strummed the first chord, my voice quivering at first, then steadying as I sang. Each note carried the weight of loss, fear, hope, and renewal. I sang not just for myself, but for every neighbor who had survived, for every child who had cried, for every family rebuilding their lives. As the final note lingered in the humid evening air, the crowd erupted in applause. I looked out at their faces, shining with tears, smiles, and pride. Savannah had survived, and so had we. After the performance, Mason approached, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You were incredible," he said softly. There was no bravado in his tone, just honesty. "You helped me get here," I replied, feeling the weight of everything we had endured together. Sophia pulled me into a hug, nearly knocking me off my feet. "We did it, Emma. We really did." June nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "Remember this feeling," she said. "This is what resilience looks like, when fear doesn't stop you, when hope carries you forward." That night, as I walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, I reflected on the past weeks. The storm had taken much from us, but it had also given something invaluable. A reminder of human strength, community, and the power of choosing hope in the face of despair. I realized that Savannah, with its moss-draped oaks and cobblestone streets, had changed, but so had I. I had discovered courage I didn't know existed, bonds that could withstand fear, and a sense of purpose that would guide me long after the city recovered its streets and homes. The festival night arrived with a gentle breeze, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and roasted corn through Savannah's streets. Lanterns swayed above, casting a warm glow over the repaired stalls and painted banners that celebrated survival, hope, and renewal. It was as if the city itself exhaled, shedding weeks of fear and exhaustion, embracing a new rhythm of life. I stood backstage, guitar in hand, heart pounding, not with anxiety this time, but with anticipation. The community had come together in ways I had never imagined. Families who had lost everything were smiling again. Children ran freely, their laughter weaving through the crowd like threads of gold. Elderly neighbors leaned on canes or each other, their eyes bright with pride. And I, Emma Hartley, stood ready to give voice to our shared journey. Sophia nudged me, her grin infectious. Time to show them what resilience sounds like. Mason's presence beside me grounded me. We didn't need words. His steady gaze said everything. He was there, just as he had been through the storm, through the fear, through the rebuilding. June had coordinated volunteers one last time, her quiet nod reassuring me that I was ready. I strummed the first chord, and the familiar vibration flowed through me, anchoring my soul. I began to sing, not just for the music, but for the people I loved, for the town that had become my home, for the lessons the hurricane had forced me to learn. Every note carried a fragment of fear, loss, hope, and gratitude. The crowd listened, rapt, faces lit by lanterns and emotion. By the final chorus, tears ran down my cheeks. The applause that followed was deafening, but more than the sound, I felt a wave of connection, of shared experience. Savannah had endured, and so had we. We had faced the storm, and we had chosen to rise. After the performance, Mason approached, gently taking my hand. "You've grown so much," he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I had good teachers," I replied, glancing at Sophia and June. "And incredible friends." Sophia threw her arms around me, nearly lifting me off my feet. "We did this together," she whispered. "All of us." June joined us, her eyes reflecting the lantern light. "Never forget what you've learned. Strength isn't just about surviving. It's about helping others stand, even when you feel unsteady yourself." That night, as I walked home, Savannah seemed different yet familiar. The streets bore the scars of the hurricane, but they also held stories of courage, generosity, and resilience. Each moss-draped oak, each cobblestone, each repaired home whispered reminders that life could endure even the fiercest storms. I thought of my father, of the advice he had once given me about facing challenges with courage and integrity. I realized that the hurricane, terrifying and destructive as it had been, had revealed the best parts of humanity: love, compassion, and the refusal to surrender to fear. Weeks later, the town continued to rebuild. Streets were cleared, homes repaired, and laughter once again echoed in the parks. Savannah had been tested, and in many ways transformed. And I, Emma Hartley, had been transformed with it. I had discovered my voice, my strength, and my ability to inspire hope in others. Mason and I remained close, our bond strengthened by shared adversity. Sophia continued to light up every room she entered, and June's guidance lingered in my actions, a steady reminder of the power of care and patience. As I wrote this autobiography, I wanted to capture not just the story of the hurricane, but the story of resilience, the story of a city, a community, and a young woman learning to rise after the storm. Life is fragile, I learned, but it is also remarkably strong when courage, hope, and love guide your steps. Savannah taught me that beauty can coexist with destruction, that fear can coexist with bravery, and that the human heart, when faced with unimaginable challenges, has a remarkable capacity to heal and grow. I carry that lesson with me every day, strumming my guitar, walking the streets of my beloved city, and remembering the nights we faced the storm together. The hurricane changed us all, but it did not break us. And in that truth, I found my purpose: to help, to heal, and to remind others that even after the darkest storms, the light always returns.